December 22nd, 2023. First Methodist Church Fellowship Hall, 7:30 in the evening. The metal folding chairs were cold through my dress slacks. Pine garland hung along the windows, but underneath I could still smell the floor wax and 40 years of potluck suppers. Wind rattled the frosted glass. Someone had set out cinnamon punch on the side table, steam rising into the fluorescent buzz overhead. Diane arrived separately, her perfume reaching me before she did. She joined the ministry women near the decorated tree, laughing at something I couldn't hear. The DJ started Winter Wonderland. Couples moved toward the small dance floor. I walked over. Work roughened hands, clean shirt, trying. Dance with me? Just one song? She jerked backward. The Christmas cookie platter hit the floor, scattering across tile. Don't touch me, her voice cut through every conversation. God, you're so needy. Can't you see I'm talking? 60 faces turned. The music kept playing, mocking. Pastor Dale's face registered shock, then discomfort. His wife Martha's expression was calculating, already filing this away. Diane turned back to the women, laughed too loud. My hands hung frozen mid-reach, exit door 20 feet away. That's when my mother's voice came from the corner table, quiet and certain. Don't trust her, Warren. I drove Mother home in silence. The truck heater labored against December cold, blowing more noise than warmth. Her hands gripped the door handle tighter than necessary on the turns. Ice had glazed the county road during the party. I felt the tires search for purchase twice before we reached our drive. Careful on the steps, I said, coming around to help her down. She took my arm, but her weight pulled heavier than usual. The porch boards creaked under us, familiar sound I'd heard 10,000 times. Her breathing came shallow and quick. You all right? Chest feels tight. She pressed one hand there, the other still locked on my elbow. Been tight since we left. I got her inside. The farmhouse held the days cold. I'd turned the heat down before we left, habit from 40 years of watching pennies. Mother's coffee pot sat on the counter, grounds still in the basket from morning. The smell of it, stale and bitter, filled the kitchen. She pointed toward the hallway. Get the deed, tonight, from the safe. Mother, before she does. Her voice had that edge I remembered from when I was 17 and thought I knew better than her about something. Your father's papers, all of them. Check every signature, every date. Promise me. I promise. She nodded once, then shuffled toward her bedroom. The door closed. I heard her lock click, something she never did. I stood in that kitchen for a long minute, listening to the wind find gaps in the window frames. Whistling through cracks my father had meant to caulk but never got around to, before the heart attack took him. That was 1988. 35 years of that same whistle. Diane's car pulled in around midnight. I heard the gravel crunch, saw her headlights sweep across the kitchen wall, the engine cut. Car door. Her footsteps up the porch, quick and light. She came in, glanced at me sitting at the table, with papers spread everywhere, said nothing. Went straight upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard her breathing settle into sleep, peaceful as a child's. I had the mortgage statements laid out in chronological order. $1,847 every month for 4 years. My income as equipment dealer and part-time farmer averaged $4,200 monthly. Hers as church volunteer coordinator, that's what she called it, though it was mostly unpaid ministry work with a small stipend, brought maybe $1,200, 70-30 split for 4 years. I'd never thought about it that way before, never added it up, just paid the bills, kept things running, figured that's what a man does. The property deed sat in front of me, yellowed paper in a protective sleeve. I'd pulled it from the safe behind Mother's bedroom closet, the one Father installed himself in 1975. Combination still the same, Mother's birthday. The deed showed the original transfer from my grandfather to my father, dated 1960. 40 acres, described by meets and bounds, handwritten survey notes in the margins. Father's signature in his careful block letters. Then below it, the transfer from Father's estate to me after he died, witnessed and notarized, dated April 1988. But there was a third entry, same property description but with an addition, an amendment, filed with the county clerk. 2 names listed as owners, Warren Daniel Hutchins and Diane Marie Hutchins. The ink was different, newer. The paper quality didn't match. This was a photocopy stapled to the original, the kind the county uses for amendments and corrections. File date stamped in the corner, November 2013. 10 years ago, I checked the other documents. Bank statements, insurance policies, utility bills. Most showed both our names. That was normal for married couples. But the deed amendment, that was different. That gave her legal standing, legal claim. Half ownership of land, my grandfather cleared with a mule and a turning plow that my father worked until it killed him, that I'd been maintaining and paying for since I was 22 years old. I sat there until 2 in the morning, papers spread like evidence, the kitchen light humming overhead. Upstairs, my wife slept the sleep of someone without a single troubled thought. The wind picked up outside, Through the window over the sink, I could see the equipment shed where Father's old John Deere still sat, the 72 model he'd bought, used, and kept running for 16 years. I'd been meaning to rebuild that engine for a decade, maybe longer. Always something more urgent. I picked up the deed amendment, held it close to the light. The signatures looked right. The notary seal was proper, everything official and legal and binding. Filed November 2013, right in the middle of Mother's hip surgery recovery, when I was driving her to physical therapy 3 times a week and barely keeping up with farm work and the equipment dealership, when I wasn't paying attention to paperwork, when I trusted my wife to handle things. I stayed at the kitchen table until 3, then packed the papers back into their folders. Left the deed on top where I'd see it first thing. Went upstairs and lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, listening to Diane breathe. By 6, I was back downstairs making coffee. Mother shuffled out around 7, moving slower than yesterday. Her color was off, gray undertone I didn't like. "We should get you checked," I said. "It's Sunday. Doctor's closed. Hospital isn't." She waved me off, but her hand trembled doing it. "Church first, then we'll see." We took separate vehicles again. Diane left at 9:15, didn't ask if Mother needed a ride. I followed 20 minutes later with Mother in my passenger seat, her breathing still shallow. The parking lot was half full when we arrived. Gravel crunching under tires. Everyone bundling against the wind. I came around to help Mother out. She gripped the doorframe, hesitated. "Warren, I don't feel..." Her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the ground, 90 pounds of her suddenly dead weight in my arms. Her face had gone chalk white, lips tinged blue, one hand clutched at her chest. Mother, stay with me." Her eyes rolled back. "Someone call an ambulance." I lowered her onto the gravel, my jacket under her head. Her breathing came in short gasps. "Mother, can you hear me?" Pastor Dale ran over, phone already out. "I'm calling." "Warren, is she..." "Call them, now." People gathered, voices overlapping, questions I couldn't answer. I kept one hand on Mother's shoulder, the other checking her pulse at her wrist. Weak, thready. Through the crowd, I saw the church entrance. Glass doors reflecting morning sun. Inside, visible through the glare, Diane stood at the fellowship hall cleanup table, laughing, talking with Richard Hoover, the insurance agent, both of them sorting paper plates into trash bags. She hadn't looked outside once. "Diane?" someone called. "Warren needs you." She glanced toward the door, saw the crowd, turned back to Richard, kept talking. Dale saw it too. His face went carefully neutral. "Ambulance is 4 minutes out." Mother's hand found mine, squeezed once. Her lips moved, but no sound came. "Don't talk. Save your strength. They're coming." The ambulance arrived in 3 minutes. Paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher. Oxygen mask, IV started before they even closed the doors. Dale gripped my shoulder. "I'll let folks know. You go." I looked back at the church one more time. Diane was still inside, still hadn't come out. Dale's voice dropped. "I saw what happened in there last night. I'm sorry, Warren." The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and burned coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that frequency that gets inside your skull. I'd been there 2 hours when the doctor came out, still in his surgical cap. "Stroke," he said. "We've got her stabilized, but the next 48 hours are critical. You can see her briefly. 5 minutes. She looks small in that bed, tubes and wires running everywhere, monitor beeping steady." I held her hand, careful of the IV. "You were right," I whispered, "about checking everything, about not trusting her." Her fingers twitched in mine. Back in the waiting room, I pulled out my phone. Diane hadn't called, hadn't texted. I scrolled to Eleanor's number instead. Diane's younger sister, the one who'd always been kind to me, who'd actually seemed to like our family dinners before Diane stopped hosting them. She answered on the second ring. "Warren, what's wrong?" I told her. The party, the collapse, the hospital. Stroke, critical, silence on the line. Then, "Oh God, where's Diane?" "Still at church, far as I know." "She didn't go with you?" "Didn't even come outside." More silence. I heard Eleanor breathing, heard her moving to somewhere quieter, a door closing. "Warren, I need to tell you something." Her voice had changed, careful now, frightened. "Diane called me 6 weeks ago, asked if I knew any real estate attorneys who specialized in property liquidation." My hand tightened on the phone. "She said it was just preliminary, just exploring options in case anything happened to Nora. She wanted to know how to liquidate farm assets quickly, avoid probate delays. She said," Eleanor's voice caught, "she said you'd be too emotional to handle it properly when the time came." The waiting room walls seemed closer suddenly, closer and wider, and too bright. 6 weeks ago," I said. "Before the party, before any of this." "Yes. While Mother was healthy." "Warren, I didn't think... I should have told you then. I should have..." She was crying now. She asked me not to mention it to you, said she didn't want to upset you unnecessarily, and I just thought she was being practical, planning ahead. But after what you just told me about last night, about her not even coming outside, when Nora collapsed, I closed my eyes, saw that deed amendment again. November 2013, 10 years of positioning. Eleanor, my voice came out flat, dead. I think she's been planning this longer than either of us realized. The line went quiet, except for her breathing. What are you going to do? She finally asked. I don't know yet, but I'm not signing anything, not one piece of paper. Not until I know exactly what I'm looking at. After we hung up, I sat in that plastic chair and stared at nothing. The coffee burned my throat going down. Somewhere down the hall, someone's monitor alarm went off, then silenced. 6 weeks ago, while Mother was still cooking Sunday dinners, while I was still pretending we had a marriage instead of a long, slow ambush. Marcus Webb found me at the equipment shop Monday morning, 6 o'clock before sunrise. I hadn't slept. Just driven straight from the hospital to the shop, unlocked the bay doors, and started pulling the tarp off Father's old John Deere. I heard his truck before I saw it. Diesel rattle I'd know anywhere. That '98 Ford he'd been nursing along for 15 years. Headlights swept across the shop wall. Engine cut. Door creaked open and slammed shut. His boots on concrete. Slow deliberate steps. He appeared in the bay doorway carrying 2 thermoses, his breath fogging in the cold air. Didn't say anything for a full minute. Just set 1 thermos on the workbench beside me, unscrewed his own, and took a long drink. The smell of his coffee, black, strong enough to strip paint, mixed with the oil and metal smell of the shop. Heard about Nora, he finally said. Dale called me last night. I nodded. Hands already working loose the engine cover bolts. The wrench was cold enough to burn. How bad? Stroke? Stable, but critical. Marcus walked around the tractor, studying it the way he studied everything. Careful, measuring. We'd been partners in Webb & Hutchins equipment for 22 years. Sold tractors, fixed what broke, kept small farms running. He knew when I was holding something back. Dale also told me about the party, he said. About Diane. My hand slipped on the wrench. Knuckles scraped against the engine block. Warren. I found something. The words came out before I'd decided to say them. In the deed, her name's been on it for 10 years, filed back in 2013. Marcus set his thermos down. Say that again. I told him. The amendment. November 2013, right during Mother's hip surgery. Eleanor's call about the real estate attorney. 6 weeks of planning before any of this started. He was quiet for a long time. Outside, the sun was starting to edge the horizon, gray light creeping through the bay door. Somewhere down the street, a truck started up, engine cold knocking until it warmed. That's a long game, Marcus said finally. That's not impulse, that's strategy. Yeah. He picked up a socket wrench, handed it to me. What are you planning to do? Pull this engine. Rebuild it from the frame up. I fitted the socket over another bolt. Figure out the rest while I work. Good. He selected a wrench from the pegboard, moved to the other side of the tractor. I'll help. But Warren, I know. You need to check everything. Every document she ever touched. Every signature. Every date. He loosened a mounting bolt, the sound of metal on metal echoing in the cold shop. And you need to do it quietly, before she knows you're looking. We worked in silence after that, pulling bolts, disconnecting hoses, labeling everything so we'd remember how it went back together. The engine came free, around 8, Marcus operating the hoist while I guided it onto the stand. 400 pounds of cast iron and old engineering, held together by 35 years of my father's maintenance and my neglect. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. Tear it down to the frame, Warren. Sometimes that's the only way to see what's broke for good. I looked at him. He wasn't talking about the engine anymore. Parts that are salvageable, we'll clean them up, make them right, he continued. Parts that are cracked through, that are just holding on by rust and habit. Those we throw away. Start fresh. And if the whole block's cracked, then we source a new one, but we don't know until we look. He checked his watch. I've got a parts delivery at 9, but I'll be back this afternoon. We'll take the head off, see what we're dealing with. After he left, I stood there looking at that engine. Father had bought this tractor in 1972, the year I was born, ran it hard for 16 years, maintained it like his life depended on it, because it did. When he died, I parked it and bought newer equipment. Couldn't stand looking at it. Couldn't stand the reminder. Now I was taking it apart, piece by piece, looking for what could be saved. My phone rang. Hospital. Mr. Hutchins, your mother's awake. She's asking for you. Mother looked better. Color had come back to her face. They'd taken out some of the tubes. She gripped my hand when I sat down, her fingers stronger than yesterday. The deed, she whispered. Your father's deed. Did you get it? I got it. Diane's name is on there, from 2013. Her jaw tightened. That's what I was afraid of. Warren, listen to me. Your father never finished transferring the deed properly. When he died, we were in the middle of probate, and it was messy. There was confusion about whether it went straight to you or stayed in the estate first. We filed paperwork, but I don't think it was ever completed. What does that mean? It means there's a flaw, a gap in the chain of title. If you can prove his estate was never fully probated, if you can show the original transfer was incomplete, she paused, catching her breath. The monitor beeped faster. Diane's name shouldn't have been added in the first place, not without clearing the estate properly. Where's the proof? County Probate Court. Look for case number 88 ES 1147, Daniel Hutchins' estate. There should be a file stamp saying incomplete or follow-up required. Your father died in March. We filed in April. But then I got sick myself that summer, and things fell through the cracks. I squeezed her hand gently. I'll check it tomorrow. Tonight, Warren. Check it tonight. Don't wait. My phone buzzed. Text from my brother Glenn, 2 states away. Call me. Need to talk about Mom. Mother saw my expression. What? Glenn wants to talk. Don't let him pressure you. Her voice was fierce despite the weakness. He'll tell you to compromise, to keep the peace, to just sign whatever Diane wants. He always does. But this is your father's land, your legacy. Don't you dare give it away to keep false peace. And I promised her I wouldn't. Back in the parking lot, I called Glenn. He answered immediately. Warren, Jesus, how's Mom? Stable, stroke, but she's talking and always, thank God. Listen, I talked to Diane this morning. You what? She called me. Said Mom's medical bills are going to be significant. Said you two need to discuss the farm situation, make some hard decisions about liquidation to cover costs. She thinks, Glenn, my voice came out flat, hard. When did you start taking marriage advice from my wife? Silence. Mom doesn't need the farm sold. Mom needs me to protect what Dad built. And Diane's been planning to sell it since November, maybe longer. This isn't about medical bills, this is about her wanting out. That's not what she said. I don't care what she said. Stay out of it. I hung up. Sat in my truck, with the engine running, heat finally starting to blow warm. Through the windshield, I could see the hospital entrance, people coming and going, living their ordinary lives while mine came apart in slow motion. My phone rang again. Glenn. I let it go to voicemail. 20 minutes later, he texted, fine. But don't say I didn't try to help keep this family together. I looked at that message for a long time. Then I drove to the county courthouse to pull a 35-year-old probate file. Diane showed up at the farmhouse Wednesday afternoon, 3 days after Mother's stroke. I was at the kitchen table with county records spread everywhere, photocopies from probate court, the original estate file, Father's incomplete transfer documents stamped in red ink, follow-up required. She walked in without knocking, Eleanor trailing behind, looking uncomfortable. We need to talk, Diane said. No greeting, no asking about Mother's condition. I looked at Eleanor. You knew about this? She asked me to come, mediate. Eleanor's voice was small. Warren, I'm just trying to help. Sit down, Diane said. She dropped a manila folder on the table, covering Father's probate papers. This is the co-op spring planning contract. Felix Grant sent it over yesterday. Needs both our signatures by March 31st, or you lose the seed credit line. I opened the folder. Standard contract, 40 acres, corn and soybeans, payment terms, delivery schedule. Same one I'd signed for the past 8 years. But this year's version had a new signature block. Both property owners required. Since when does Felix need both signatures? Since I called him and explained I'm a legal co-owner, Diane sat across from me, fingers laced together on the table like this was a business meeting. He checked with the co-op board. State law requires both property owners to sign any contract that encumbers the land as collateral for credit. My hands went cold. You called Felix. Someone had to be practical. Eleanor shifted in her chair. The smell of her perfume, something floral, trying too hard, mixed with the stale coffee scent that lived in these walls. Diane, maybe you could. Here's what's going to happen, Diane continued, talking over her sister. You're going to sign an agreement giving me half the farm's assessed value, $170,000. Then I'll sign the co-op contract. As the number sat there between us like something dead. And if I don't, then I don't sign. No contract, no seed credit, no planting, no planting. She smiled, small, tight. Well, you lose everything by October anyway. Bank forecloses, at least this way you get to keep something. Eleanor's voice cracked. Diane, that's Warren, can't you both? Maybe there's a compromise? There is no compromise? Diane kept her eyes on me. I've consulted with an attorney. I've done the math. This farm is worth $340,000 assessed. Half is mine. I'm being generous, offering to settle for half instead of forcing a sale and taking my portion, plus legal fees. Generous, the word tasted like copper. You have until March 31st, 6 weeks. She stood up. Eleanor, we're leaving. Warren, Eleanor started. Go with your sister, I said quietly. After they left, I sat there with that contract in front of me. March 31st. 6 weeks to either hand over $170,000 I didn't have or watch 40 acres of my father's work go under. The wind picked up outside, rattling the window frames. That same whistle through the gaps Father never got around to fixing. I called Marcus. She's got me in a corner. Come to the shop tomorrow, he said. I need to show you something. Thursday morning, I stopped by the church office to pick up a member directory. Mother's rehab facility wanted a list for visitors. The church secretary wasn't at her desk, but I heard voices from the fellowship hall. Women's ministry, coffee, the weekly meeting Diane used to coordinate before the stroke. The door was cracked open. I should have knocked, should have announced myself. Instead, I heard Martha Kimmon's voice, clear and loud. We need to pray for Warren Hutchins. Diane shared in confidence that he's being financially controlling, refusing to give her access to farm proceeds. She's afraid he's planning to leave her destitute. Someone murmured agreement. It's spiritual abuse, Martha continued, using money as a weapon, making her beg for basic security. After 30 years of marriage, she deserves better. My hand froze on the doorknob. Another voice, Sadie Morrison from accounting at the bank, chimed in. I've been praying about this. But did you hear she's been meeting with that developer, Harlan Eckert? The one who wants to buy farm properties for commercial development? That's him. My sister works at the county assessor's office. She said Diane and Eckert have been meeting there since early November, looking at property valuations, discussing sale timelines. November. 2 months before the Christmas party. 8 weeks before she screamed at me in front of 60 people. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. Well, Martha said, maybe she's just protecting herself, getting her options in order in case Warren follows through on his threats. What threats? Someone asked. Diane said he told her if she didn't stop questioning his financial decisions, I pushed the door open. 6 women sat around the fellowship hall table, coffee cups and Bibles and a prayer list spread between them. Every face turned toward me. Martha's expression went from righteous concern to caught-out shame in half a second. Warren, we were just praying for me, I heard. My voice sounded strange, hollow. For the record, I've never threatened my wife, never controlled finances, and I only just found out she added her name to my father's property deed 10 years ago without telling me. Silence. The coffee urn burbled in the corner, loud as a scream. But you're right about one thing. She has been meeting with Harlan Eckert. Since November. 2 months before she humiliated me at the Christmas party. 2 months before she started telling people I'm abusive. Makes you wonder which came first, the meetings with the developer, or the story about the controlling husband. I left the directory on the table and walked out. Behind me, whispers erupted. In the parking lot, Marcus was leaning against my truck. He'd followed me from the shop. You heard, he said. Not a question. November. She's been planning this since November. I know, brother. That's what I wanted to show you. He pulled a folder from inside his jacket. County clerk's office. Public records. My cousin works there. Pulled these for me yesterday. He handed me 3 photocopied documents. The first was Father's 1988 estate file. Incomplete. Stamped across the top in faded red ink, just like Mother said. The second was Diane's 2013 deed amendment, filed by attorney Thomas Crane. No witness signature from me. No consent form. Just her name added to property I'd inherited from my father's incomplete estate. The third made my vision narrow. Preliminary sales agreement. Hutchins Farm property, 40 acres. Seller, Diane Marie Hutchins. Buyer, Eckert Development LLC. Earnest money, $50,000 non-refundable. Date, January 18th, 24. 5 weeks before the Christmas party. 5 weeks before she screamed, "Don't touch me," in front of God and everybody. This wasn't a reaction. This was a plan. Marcus's hand gripped my shoulder. She wasn't reacting to anything you did, Warren. She was executing, and you just got in the way. Oh boy. The wind cut across the parking lot, carrying the smell of old snow and diesel exhaust from the highway. My hands were shaking. I looked down at that sales agreement, at my wife's signature, at the date that proved every humiliation, every cold word, every moment of the past 6 weeks had been theater. She'd been selling the farm out from under me since January. The party was just cover. The ultimatum was just the closing move. There's more, Marcus said quietly. Look at the attorney who filed her deed amendment. I looked. Thomas Crane, attorney at law, license number, office address in Columbus. So I called the state bar yesterday. Thomas Crane was disbarred in 2019. Ethics violations. That filing he did in 2013 might not be legal at all. Something cold and sharp settled in my chest. Not anger. Anger was hot. This was calculation. What do I do? We fight. Marcus took the folder back, tucked it inside his jacket. But we do it quiet. We do it smart. And we do it with evidence, not emotion. You go to a real attorney, not whoever she's using. File a motion to correct the deed. Use your father's incomplete estate as leverage. Make it a legal mess she can't afford to fight. By March 31st, before March 31st, give yourself time. He opened my truck door for me. Go see Joshua Cooper. Criminal defense mostly, but he handles property disputes. Tell him everything. Bring copies of all of it. I climbed into the truck. Through the windshield, I could see the church's white steeple against gray sky. 30 years I'd sat in those pews. 30 years of pretending everything was fine while it rotted from the inside out. Marcus leaned into the window. Warren, this is winnable, but you have to be willing to burn it all down to win. The marriage, the reputation, the church friendships, all of it. You ready for that? I looked at him, looked at the church, looked at the folder, tucked inside his jacket containing proof that my wife had been planning to destroy me, since long before I gave her a reason. Yeah, I said, I'm ready. I started driving Mother to physical therapy 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, at 9. The rehab facility was 20 minutes from the farm, new construction that still smelled like paint and carpet glue. I'd help her from wheelchair to parallel bars, stand close in case she stumbled, count repetitions with her, while the therapist coached. 10 more steps, Nora, you're doing great. Mother's jaw set with determination. She gripped those bars hard enough her knuckles went white, dragging her left leg forward inch by inch. The stroke had weakened her whole left side, but she was fighting it like she'd fought everything else in her life, with pure, stubborn refusal to quit. That's it, 9 more. Diane never came, not once in 3 weeks, but other people noticed. The rehab facility shared a parking lot with the medical plaza, where half the church congregation saw their doctors. Dale Kimmons came through one Friday, visiting a parishioner recovering from surgery, saw me helping Mother navigate the walker down the hallway. He stopped, watched for a minute, said nothing, just nodded at me, and kept walking. Sunday service, he worked it into his sermon. Didn't use names, but everyone knew. There are those among us, he said from the pulpit, who honor their parents not with words but with presence, who show up day after day, not when it's convenient but when it's necessary. Exodus tells us to honor our father and mother. Some of you are living that out in ways that humble me. Martha Kimmons, sitting 3 rows ahead of me, shifted in her seat. After service, 2 women from Mother's quilting circle stopped me in the parking lot, asked how Nora was doing, when she'd be home, whether I needed anything. One of them, Betty Garrison, farmer's widow herself, squeezed my arm and said quietly, "We know what you're dealing with, Warren. Some of us see what's really happening." By the 3rd week, I'd started bringing Mother's legal documents to rehab, organizing them during her rest breaks, spread them across the visitor table, while she napped in the chair by the window. Estate files, property records, tax returns going back to 1988, that's when I found it. Tucked inside Father's original deed file, yellowed with age, the 1988 property transfer application, the form Father had started filling out right before he died. His handwriting getting shakier toward the bottom. He must have known something was wrong even then. Transfer from Daniel Hutchins, deceased. Transfer to Warren Daniel Hutchins, son, sole heir. Property description, filled in. Witness signatures, blank. Spousal consent, stamped in. Red, deceased. N.A. County Clerk, stamp, incomplete. Spousal signature, required, handwritten note in margin. Follow-up filing required. Original application insufficient, County Clerk M. Patterson, 4/12/88. I photographed it with my phone. 3 different angles, making sure the stamp and the clerk's note were clear. Mother woke up, saw me staring at the document. "You found it?" "Yeah." That's your father trying to take care of you from the grave." Her voice was getting stronger every day. The estate was never properly settled. Everything Diane filed after that, it's built on a flawed foundation. I called Marcus from the parking lot on the way home. "I've got it, the proof Mother mentioned. Father's original application was rejected as incomplete. There's a clerk's note saying follow-up was required. That follow-up never happened. Which means Diane's 2013 amendment was added to a deed transfer that was never legally finalized. She has no claim." Long silence. Then Marcus laughed, low and satisfied. "Brother, you just found your way out. Bring that to Joshua Cooper tomorrow. Don't wait." Saturday morning, Marcus and I met at the shop before dawn. The engine rebuild had become our daily ritual. 2 hours every morning before the rest of the world woke up. We'd stripped the John Deere down to the block now, every part cleaned and labeled and laid out on the workbench, in the order we'd reassemble it. Marcus brought coffee in his thermos, stronger than truck stop sludge. The shop was cold enough our breath fogged. Rain had started overnight, that March rain that's half sleet, drumming on the tin roof loud enough we had to raise our voices. Felix called me yesterday, I said, fitting a piston ring into place. The metal was cold and precise, clicking into the groove with a sound like certainty. Reminded me about the deadline. Said March 28th is the last possible day for the co-op contract. After that, seat suppliers won't extend credit. That's 3 weeks. Marcus checked his watch. How long before Cooper can file your motion? He said 2 days to draft it, 3 days for the court to schedule a hearing. Hearing could be anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks out, depending on the judge's calendar. Marcus laid out Father's incomplete deed beside the engine parts. Then Diane's 2013 amendment. Then the January sales agreement with Eckert Development. Arranged them chronologically, like we'd arranged the engine components. A timeline showing exactly how things had been built and where the cracks were. This is war strategy, he said. Document warfare. Everything in sequence, everything provable. She's got the church women convinced I'm the abuser. For now. But when that preliminary sales agreement becomes public record in the court filing, when people see she's been planning to sell your father's land since January. He shook his head. Truth has a way of spreading, Warren, especially in a small town, especially when people realize they've been lied to. The rain picked up outside. Water ran down the bay door in sheets. The smell of wet concrete mixed with engine oil and old grease and Marcus's coffee. My phone rang. Felix Grant. Warren, I hate to pressure you, but the board's asking questions. They need to know you're going to make this deadline. What if the deed situation changes? Changes how? What if Diane's name gets removed from the property? What if she's not actually a legal co-owner? Silence on the line. Then, you got proof of that? Working on it. Motion's being filed Monday. Hearing should be within 2 weeks. If you can get it corrected before the 28th, if you can prove you're sole owner, you can sign the contract yourself. But, Warren, that's cutting it awful close. I know. After he hung up, Marcus handed me a socket wrench. 2 weeks to untangle 35 years of paperwork. Think it's possible? I looked at the engine block. All those parts that had been sealed together for decades, now spread out where we could see every crack, every worn bearing, every piece that needed replacing. It's possible, I said, if we're thorough, if we document everything, if we don't make mistakes. And if the judge rules in your favor. Yeah, if that. Marcus started torquing down head bolts, working in the pattern printed on the manual page we'd taped to the wall, methodical, precise, the kind of work that doesn't forgive shortcuts. Your father would be proud, he said after a while, standing up for what's his, not rolling over just to keep false peace. Through the bay door, I could see March rain washing down the gravel drive, pooling in the low spots, starting to melt what was left of February's ice, mud season coming, the season between winter and planting, when everything's torn up and messy and you just have to trust that solid ground is somewhere underneath. Glenn called Tuesday afternoon while I was replacing spark plugs on a customer's tractor. I almost didn't answer. His name on the screen made my jaw tighten, but something made me pick up. Warren. His voice had that edge he got when he'd already decided he was right. We need to talk about this situation. I set down the socket wrench. Outside the shop bay, March wind pushed rain sideways across the parking lot. What situation? Diane called me yesterday. She's very upset. Says you're refusing to cooperate on basic financial planning, that you're making unilateral decisions about mom's care without consulting her as your spouse. Stop. The word came out harder than I meant. When did you start taking her side? I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to keep this family together. She says, mom's medical bills are going to be substantial, that the farm might need to be sold to cover costs, and you won't even discuss it. Glenn, she's been planning to sell the farm since January, before the stroke, before any medical bills existed. Silence on the line. She added her name to Dad's property deed in 2013 without telling me. While Mom was recovering from hip surgery and I was driving her to physical therapy every day, you remember that year when I was barely keeping the equipment business running and handling all of Mom's care? Warren. She met with a developer in November, signed a preliminary sales agreement with him in January, $50,000, earnest money, non-refundable. She's been positioning to take this land for months, and you're calling me about cooperation? The rain hammered harder on the tin roof. Water dripped through a gap near the north corner, another thing I'd been meaning to fix. Glenn's voice changed, smaller. She didn't mention any developer. Of course she didn't. She told you, I'm abusive and controlling, so when I fight back, you'll think I'm the problem. Classic setup. And it worked, didn't it? You called to pressure me into signing away Dad's farm. I called to... He stopped, started again. Warren, are you sure about this? About the developer and the dates? I've got the documents. County records, public filings. Her signature on a sales agreement dated 5 weeks before she screamed at me in front of the entire church. Long silence. I could hear him breathing, could almost hear his worldview rearranging itself. Jesus, he finally said. Yeah. But Warren, I wouldn't have called if I'd known. But you did call, because you believed her over me without even asking my side. I'm sorry. His voice cracked. God, I'm so sorry. Send me everything. Every document you've got. I need to see this. Why? Because if she lied to me, she's lying to other people too. And maybe I can help. I don't know. But I need to see the proof. After we hung up, I stood there with the phone in my hand, staring at nothing. The customer's tractor sat half-finished on the lift, spark plug wires dangling, oil smell thick in the cold air, mixing with the wet metal scent of rain. Marcus's truck pulled up 20 minutes later. He came through the bay door, shaking water off his jacket, carrying a manila envelope sealed with evidence tape. Got something for you, he said. Courthouse closes at 4:30. Made it with 10 minutes to spare. He spread 3 documents across the clean section of workbench, the same 3 he'd shown me before, but now with official county stamps, certified copies, signed by the clerk. Document 1, Marcus said, tapping the first page. Your father's 1988 estate application. Incomplete, never finalized. That stamp right there? That's your proof Diane's claim was built on a foundation that didn't exist. I picked it up. The paper was stiff, official weight. Clerk's certification dated yesterday. Document 2, Diane's 2013 deed amendment filed by Thomas Crane, attorney at law. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed me a screenshot of the State Bar website. Thomas Crane was disbarred in March 21. Ethics violations including fraudulent filings and misrepresentation. That amendment he filed for Diane, it might not be worth the paper it's printed on. A cold certainty settled in my chest. She used a dirty attorney. Or she didn't know he was dirty when she hired him. Either way, it puts her entire claim in question. Marcus set down the third document. And this is the nail in the coffin. Preliminary sales agreement, January 18th, 8 weeks before the Christmas party. She was already selling before she had any reason to leave except she wanted the money. I looked at that signature, Diane Marie Hutchins, neat and confident. Below it, Harlan Eckert for Eckert Development LLC. Purchase price, $340,000. Earnest money, $50,000 non-refundable, paid in full. She'd already pocketed $50,000 from selling land she didn't legally own. Warren, you understand what this means? Marcus's voice was quiet, serious. This isn't a marital dispute anymore. This is fraud. She defrauded the developer. She defrauded you. She defrauded the county clerk's office. If Joshua Cooper plays this right, she could face criminal charges. The rain had shifted to hail, tiny stones bouncing off the concrete outside. The sound was like static, white noise underneath everything. There's one more thing. Marcus pulled out another paper, this one a handwritten note on county letterhead. My cousin at the clerk's office? She remembered something. Back in 2013, there was a question about the filing. Someone, she thinks it was your mother, came in asking why Diane's name had been added when the original estate had never been cleared. The clerk told her she'd need to file a formal objection, hire an attorney, cost money, take time. Mom was dealing with the hip surgery. She probably couldn't afford to fight it then. Right. So it stayed on the books. And Diane has been counting on that for 11 years. Marcus gathered the documents back into the envelope. Take these to Cooper tomorrow first thing. File your motion. Get a court date. It's time to stop playing defense. My phone buzzed. Text from Glenn. Talk to Diane. She's lying about a lot of things. What do you need from me? I showed Marcus the screen. He smiled, grim and satisfied. Looks like you're building an army, brother. One witness at a time. Through the bay door, I could see the hail turning back to rain. March weather that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. But underneath it, if you looked close, the ground was softening, ice breaking up. Mud season in full force, tearing up the surface so something new could grow. Mother was sitting up when I arrived Thursday evening, color better than I'd seen in weeks. The rehab facility had that institutional smell, antiseptic layered over cafeteria food and floor polish, but her room was near a window. Late afternoon sun came through, warming the linoleum. Close the door, she said. I did, pulled the visitor chair close to her bed. She gripped my hand with both of hers. Her left hand was still weak from the stroke, but her right was strong. I need to tell you something I should have said 30 years ago. Mother, let me finish before I lose my nerve. She took a breath, the monitor beside her bed beeping steadily. I never liked Diane, not from the start. I tried, Lord knows I tried, but something about her always felt calculated. I said nothing, just listened. Your father died in March '88. You were 22. Suddenly you weren't just my son anymore. You were the heir. You had 40 acres and a house and equipment. You were eligible. Her voice went quiet. Diane started coming around that summer, sweet as honey, helpful, always volunteering to organize the estate papers, to file things at the courthouse. The heater clicked on, blowing warm air that smelled like dust. Somewhere down the hall, a dinner cart rattled past. I thought maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I was just protective. Didn't think anyone was good enough for you. But Warren, she married you 6 months after your father died. 6 months. That's not falling in love. That's targeting. The word tasted like ash. Mother's eyes filled. I should have said something. Should have warned you. But you seemed happy, and I thought, maybe I was wrong. Maybe love works different for different people. So I kept my mouth shut and watched her slowly erase you from your own life. A nurse walked past in the hallway, soft-soled shoes squeaking on linoleum. The sound faded. The deed amendment in 2013, that was during my hip surgery. I was in the hospital, then rehab, then home recovery. 2 months where I couldn't do anything but sit in a chair. She squeezed my hand tighter. I came in to the county clerk's office later that year, asking questions. They told me Diane had filed paperwork adding her name, said it was routine for spouses, but I knew your father's estate had never been properly settled. I knew something was wrong. Why didn't you fight it? I was 74, tired. The attorney wanted $2,000 just to file an objection, and I told myself, maybe it would protect you. Maybe if something happened to you, at least she couldn't just abandon the farm. Maybe it would tie her to the land. She laughed, bitter and sad. I was a fool. All I did was give her a weapon. I looked out the window. Sun was setting, turning the parking lot orange and gold. Cars leaving for the day. People going home to normal lives where their wives hadn't spent 11 years positioning to steal their inheritance. Don't hate her, son. I looked back at Mother. Pity her, she said. She'll die alone with nothing but money she got by betrayal. You'll die with land and legacy and people who actually loved you. She's already lost everything that matters. She just doesn't know it yet. The monitor beeped. The heater cycled off. Silence settled like sediment. I'm filing the motion tomorrow, I said. Emergency petition to correct the deed. Court date should be within 2 weeks. Good. She released my hand, leaned back against the pillows. Your father would be proud. Standing up, fighting for what's yours. I don't feel proud. I feel tired. That's how you know it's the right fight. The easy ones don't cost you anything. Marcus was waiting at the shop when I got back. 9 o'clock. The parking lot empty except for our trucks. He had the bay lights on full, the engine on the stand looking almost complete. New gaskets, clean valves, bearings pressed in and torqued to specification. Last pieces, he said, handing me a wrench. Head bolts, valve cover. Then we find out if we did this right. We worked in silence. The wrench clicked in steady rhythm, 40 foot-pounds, then 60, then final torque to specification. Every bolt in sequence, the pattern printed on the manual page taped to the wall. Marcus pulled a silver marker from his pocket, uncapped it. On the valve cover, in careful letters, he wrote, March 24th, 2024, rebuilt by WH&MW. For the record, he said, so whoever comes after knows this engine was brought back right. I set the final wrench on the bench. The engine sat there complete. 35 years old, rebuilt from the frame up, waiting to prove whether we'd done the work correctly. Joshua Cooper filed the motion this afternoon, I said. Emergency hearing scheduled for March 27th, 1 day before the co-op deadline. Marcus checked his watch. That's 3 days from now. Yeah. You nervous? Terrified. If the judge rules against me, if he says Diane's claim stands despite the flawed foundation, I lose everything. The contract, the planning season, probably the farm by October. Marcus poured the last of his thermos into 2 shop mugs, handed me one. The coffee was cold now, thick and bitter. We drank it anyway. Tomorrow morning, we start this engine, he said. See if it runs. See if all this work meant something. And if it doesn't, then we figure out what we did wrong and fix it, same as anything else. Through the bay door, I could see March stars coming out, cold and distant. The air smelled like rain coming, that electric scent that meant weather changing. Mud season, transitioning into something else. Not spring yet, but moving that direction. Tomorrow we find out if this engine runs, Marcus said quietly. Day after, we find out if you still own the farm. And I looked at that valve cover, at the date Marcus had inscribed. March 24th, 2024. The day we finished rebuilding something my father had built, that I'd let decay, that we'd torn down to the frame and made right again. One way or another, we'd know soon if the work had been good enough. The county courthouse smelled like old wood and floor wax. March 27th, 9 in the morning. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Joshua Cooper, his briefcase open, documents arranged in precise stacks. Behind me, Marcus in the gallery, Glenn, who'd driven 5 hours overnight. Mother, in her wheelchair, the rehab facility's transport van having brought her at 7. Diane sat across the aisle with her attorney, a young woman from Columbus who looked expensive. Diane wore a navy dress, pearls, her church lady armor. She hadn't looked at me once. Judge Harkins entered. Everyone stood. He was 70, if he was a day, reading glasses on a chain, the kind of judge who'd been settling property disputes since before I was born. Hutchins petitioned to correct property deed, he said, settling into his chair. Mr. Cooper, you're up. Joshua stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of fraudulent deed amendment built on an incomplete estate transfer. In 1988, Daniel Hutchins died leaving 40 acres to his son Warren. The transfer was never properly finalized, probate was incomplete, follow-up filing was never done. 10 years later, in 2013, Diane Hutchins had her name added to that incomplete deed via an attorney who was later disbarred for ethics violations. He laid out the documents. Father's incomplete application stamped in red. The clerk's note requiring follow-up. Diane's 2013 amendment filed by Thomas Crane. The state bar record showing Crane's disbarment. Furthermore, Joshua continued, we have evidence that Mrs. Hutchins entered into a preliminary sales agreement with a developer in January of this year before any marital dispute arose to sell property she did not legally own. That agreement included $50,000 in earnest money, which she collected and kept. Diane's attorney objected. Your Honor, the length of the marriage establishes common law equity regardless of filing technicalities. These aren't technicalities, Joshua cut in. The original estate was never settled. You can't amend a deed that was never legally transferred in the first place. It's like adding a second floor to a house with no foundation. Judge Harkins studied the documents. The courtroom went silent except for the radiator ticking, the clerk's fingers on her keyboard. I'd like to hear from the witnesses, he said finally. Glenn stood when called, walked to the witness box, got sworn in. His voice was steady. Diane called me 3 weeks ago, said Warren was being financially controlling, that he was refusing to help with medical bills for our mother. She asked me to pressure him into signing over half the farm's value. Glenn looked at Diane. She stared straight ahead. I called Warren, told him to cooperate. Then he sent me the documents, the sales agreement, the dates. I realized she'd been lying to me to manipulate me into helping her steal our father's land. Pastor Dale testified next. Uncomfortable in the witness box, but honest. Warren Hutchins has been bringing his mother to physical therapy 3 times a week since her stroke. He's been managing her care, her medications, her home health appointments. His wife Diane hasn't attended a single session. When Nora collapsed in our church parking lot, Diane stayed inside, didn't come out, didn't check on her. He paused. I chose to believe Diane's version of events initially. I was wrong. The judge made notes. Called the county clerk to verify the incomplete filing status of father's 1988 estate. She confirmed it. Follow-up never completed, transfer never finalized. Diane's 2013 amendment shouldn't have been accepted without clearing the estate first. Judge Harkins removed his glasses, cleaned them, put them back on. Mrs. Hutchins, the evidence is clear. You added your name to a property deed that was never legally transferred to your husband in the first place. You then attempted to sell that property using your fraudulent claim. Your preliminary agreement with Eckert Development LLC is void. You cannot sell what you do not own. Diane's face went white. Furthermore, the attorney who filed your amendment was later disbarred, which calls into question the validity of that filing, even if the underlying estate had been properly settled. He looked at his notes. Mr. Hutchins is the sole heir to Daniel Hutchins' estate. The deed is corrected as of today to reflect that. Mrs. Hutchins' name is removed. Motion granted. The gavel came down. Diane stood, gripped the table edge. Her attorney tried to whisper something, but Diane shook her head, walked out. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, echoing all the way to the exit. Mother reached for my hand, squeezed it, said nothing. Marcus and I got back to the shop by noon. The John Deere sat where we'd left it, engine complete, waiting. Moment of truth, Marcus said. I climbed onto the seat. The metal was cold through my jeans. I turned the key to prime the fuel system, waited for the glow plug light, then hit the starter. The engine turned over once, twice, caught, rumbled to life with that deep diesel sound that means everything inside is working right. All those parts we'd cleaned and measured and torqued, coming together into something whole. Marcus grinned, shouted over the noise. First try, your daddy's tractor runs again. I let it idle, listening to the rhythm, feeling the vibration through the seat, 35 years old, rebuilt from the frame up, running like it had something left to give. Felix Grant's truck pulled into the lot 10 minutes later. He got out carrying the co-op contract, walked over while I shut the engine down. "Heard the news already?" he said. "Judge ruled in your favor. You're sole owner. Small towns. Small towns." He handed me the contract, handed me a pen. "Sign here. You made it with a day to spare." I signed. Warren Daniel Hutchins. One signature, no co-owner required. Felix shook my hand. "Your father would be proud. Spring planting starts Monday. You'll have seed delivery by Friday." And after he left, Marcus pointed toward the road. "Look." A sheriff's cruiser was heading toward my farm, light bar dark but purposeful. Behind it, a county process server's sedan. "Eviction papers," Marcus said. "Joshua filed them this morning after the hearing. She's got 48 hours to vacate the marital home." We stood there watching the vehicles disappear down the county road. The March sun was warm for the first time all year. Real warmth, not just absence of cold. The smell of thawed earth came on the wind, rich and dark. My phone buzzed. Text from Pastor Dale. "Church Women's Ministry held an emergency vote this morning. Diane removed as coordinator. Thought you should know." I showed Marcus. "It's happening," he said. "The whole thing's collapsing around her. Legal claim gone, church position gone, home gone, everything." "Yeah. How do you feel?" I thought about it. Waited for the anger, the satisfaction, the vindication I thought I'd feel at this moment. Found nothing but quiet. Just quiet. "Tired," I said finally, and relieved it's over. Through the shop bay door, I saw a car coming back down the road, Diane's silver sedan. It slowed at my driveway, turned in, then immediately reversed and sped away. She'd seen the sheriff's car, knew what it meant. I felt nothing watching her go. Not rage, not triumph. Just the absence of weight I'd been carrying so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Marcus clapped my shoulder. "Come on, let's get this tractor loaded. You've got fields to plant." Eleanor called 3 days later. First contact since the courthouse. Her voice was small, apologetic. "Warren, I need to apologize for pushing you to compromise, for not seeing what she was doing. I should have believed you from the start. You were trying to keep your sister out of trouble. Still, I was wrong." She paused. The line crackled. She moved into an apartment on the south side of town, 1 bedroom above the dollar store. Lost her church coordinator position. The women voted her out the morning after the hearing. The developers threatening legal action over the earnest money she can't return. I said nothing. Let the silence sit. "She keeps calling me," Eleanor continued, "saying this is all a mistake, that you manipulated the judge, that everyone's turned against her unfairly. But Warren, I saw those documents. The dates don't lie. She was planning this before she had any reason to leave, except she wanted the money. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle." "Don't be. I chose to be blind. That's on me." She took a breath. "For what it's worth, I hope you find peace. You deserve it after everything." After we hung up, I stood on the farmhouse porch with my coffee, watching dawn break over the Northeast 40, April 3rd, planting day. The air smelled different now. Not the sharp cold of winter or the raw mud of March, but something warmer, rich. The smell of earth ready to grow things. Mourning doves called from the fence line, their sounds soft and insistent. Pastor Dale had stopped by yesterday, hat in hand, awkward. "I owe you an apology," he'd said. "I chose false peace over truth. Pressured you to compromise when I should have been asking harder questions about who was really being harmed." I'd invited him in for coffee. We'd talked for an hour, not about Diane, but about what it means to honor your parents, about stewardship versus ownership, about why. Well, uh, um, Now Marcus's truck came up the drive, diesel rattle familiar as breathing. He parked by the equipment shed, climbed out slow, his knees weren't what they used to be, and walked over. "Ready to plant?" "Been ready." We loaded the planter with seed corn from the co-op delivery, checked the depth settings, greased the row units. The John Deere started first turn of the key, that rebuilt engine settling into a steady rumble that said everything inside was working right. I climbed onto the seat. Marcus swung up onto the fender, riding along like he had for 20 years on spring plantings. Your father cleared this field in 1960, he said as we headed toward the Northeast 40. Pulled stumps with a mule team, took him 2 summers. I know. Just making sure you remember. What you're planting isn't just corn, it's continuation. The disc harrow had already turned the soil. I'd done that work yesterday while Marcus was at a parts delivery. Now the earth lay open, dark and ready, still holding moisture from March rains. I've dropped the planter, engaged the drive, and started the first pass. The rhythm of it settled into my bones. The tractor's rumble, the planter's mechanical tick, the smell of diesel and fresh-turned soil. Behind us, perfect rows appeared. Seeds dropped at precise intervals, covered and packed. Marcus rode silent, one hand on the fender rail, watching the work, the way a man watches something he understands completely. At the far end, I turned for the second pass. The farmhouse was visible from here, white clapboard against blue sky. Mother stood at the kitchen window, home from rehab as of yesterday, recovered enough to manage with a walker. She raised one hand in a small wave. I waved back. Think you'll marry again? Marcus asked, voice barely audible over the engine. I thought about it, looked at the fields spreading out around us, at the rows we'd planted, at the land that had outlasted one marriage and would outlast whatever came next. I'm already married, I said, to this. Marcus nodded, understood. We planted until noon, broke for sandwiches and water in the equipment shed, then finished the Northeast 40 by 3, 40 acres. Same land my grandfather cleared, my father worked, that I'd nearly lost to someone who saw it as nothing but a transaction. That evening, Mother and I sat on the porch. The air was warm for early April, that temporary warmth that comes before the last cold snap. Spring peepers sang from the creek bottom. The newly planted field stretched dark and quiet, holding seeds that would break ground in 10 days if the weather held. Your father would be proud, Mother said, not giving up, standing firm. I didn't feel proud, just tired. That's how you know it mattered. We sat in silence while the sun set, painting the sky orange and red. A breeze came up, carrying the smell of growing things, of possibility, of another season, starting the way seasons always had and always would. The land doesn't care about marriages or betrayals or courthouse rulings. It just keeps turning, keeps producing, keeps offering itself to whoever's willing to do the work. I'd done the work, torn things down to the foundation, rebuilt what could be saved, planted what needed planting. The rest would grow in its own time. Mother reached over, squeezed my hand once. The land remembers who loved it and who tried to sell it. You chose right. When above us, the first stars appeared. The same stars my grandfather saw when he cleared this land, that my father saw when he worked it, that I'd see tomorrow morning when I woke to check the fields. Some things you don't fix. Some things you walk away from so better things can grow. I'd walked away. And I was still here. 6 months later, October, I sat on the same porch at dawn with my coffee. The corn was in good yield despite a dry August. The bins were full. Bills paid on time for the first time in years. Mother's health had stabilized. She moved slow but steady now, spent afternoons at her quilting circle, telling stories about my father to anyone who'd listen, keeping the memory alive. Marcus still came by 3 mornings a week. We'd rebuilt 2 more engines since spring, including the '78 Ford tractor old man Garrison's widow couldn't afford to fix. Didn't charge her. Some work you do for the doing. The church had found its balance again. I went occasionally, sat in back, left during the closing hymn. Dale understood. Some wounds heal, but the scar tissue stays tender. Diane, I heard, had moved to Columbus, taken a receptionist job at a medical office. Eleanor said she seemed smaller somehow, diminished. I felt nothing hearing it. Not satisfaction, not pity, just the distant awareness that she was living her consequences somewhere I'd never have to see them. The land teaches you things if you listen. It teaches you patience. Seeds don't grow faster because you're anxious. It teaches you to accept what is. Rain comes or it doesn't. You work with what you get. And it teaches you when to let go of what's dead so new growth can come. I learned all 3. Next spring, I'd plant again. Same fields, same ritual, same tractor engine Marcus and I rebuilt from the frame. The work continues because the work is the point, not the outcome, not the profit, not the legacy people talk about at funerals. Just the work, the showing up, the turning of soil and planting of seed and tending of what grows. She wanted space. She got all of it. Empty apartments and broken church connections and the kind of loneliness that comes from betraying everyone who trusted you. I got the land. The morning coffee, the morning doves calling at dawn, Mother's stories on Sunday evenings, Marcus's quiet friendship that asked nothing and gave everything. The math worked out just fine. Some battles you win with noise. This one I won with patience, precision, and my father's incomplete paperwork from 35 years ago. But the real victory wasn't the winning, it was the staying. The morning I climbed onto that tractor and planted the Northeast 40, knowing I'd do it again next year and the year after that, as long as my hands could work the controls. The land remembers. And now, so would I.